an RPG Gacha Shooter that released unnoticed at the end of 2023. In a sea of disposable, low-quality free-to-play games, this title tried bringing something new to the table by removing the required gambling from the gacha, choosing a grittier tone and story setting, and providing good first and third-person shooter gameplay with leaderboards and roguelike modes. A title that failed to gain an audience until it switched its focus from sci-fi to erotica. A game that struggled, then succeeded, then went offline for 2 months, and then revived amongst a huge controversy in a heavy censored state. This is the story of Snowbreak, Containment Zone. Snowbreak is a free-to-play RPG shooter with optional gacha mechanics. It released in July 20, 2023, failing to capture an audience that required to be profitable. It still acquired a small loyal fanbase that loved the grittier tone, story, world-building, gameplay, and strong theory crafting that separated the title from the rest. The high competition of that genre forced amazing Seasun Games, the studio behind Snowbreak, to start adding more fan service to the game that adhered to the storyline. The changes were well received, which made the developers double down on it and going full on a newly emerged Chinese concept called Master Love, turning the game profitable overnight. This trend kept increasing over time, with the fan service eventually turning into borderline softcore porn, which due to various events caught the attention of the Chinese government, causing the game to go into indefinite maintenance on March 2nd, 2026. On May 7, after 2 months without any communication from the studio, an unexpected announcement was made regarding the servers coming up the next day with a whole new content patch available. But on May 8, the game came back heavily censored, creating a major backlash from the community as their purchased content had either disappeared or their characters' outfits have been highly modified. Narratively, you play as the adjutant, who starts as the squad leader for handling missions with the Heimdall force. The game consists of different types of game modes that I'll divide in 3 groups: basing, minigames, and combat. The basing part of the game consisted initially on a dormitory where you could interact with the operatives you unlock. The more you play a certain character on missions, the more her affection level for the adjutant increases. The higher the affection, the higher their damage in combat, and the more background story plots from that character are unlocked, effectively making you know more about those you play the most. The minigames are seasonal with an ever-changing rotation of challenges. These give currency for buying all kinds of resources for your base, accessible to all players, allowing a true free-to-play experience. Each new season also brings new operatives, exosuits, weapons, enemies, and other resources introduced to the game, expanding the list of available characters, powers, and combinations. In reality, this means that it's difficult to max everything in the game, making you focus on your favorite operatives. The combat changed dramatically through the game's various phases, but I'll describe here the basics. The game is built around assembling a squad of operatives and tackling missions of varying complexity. You begin with 3 fixed characters: Life, Fanny, and Akasha. Every mission puts you in control of one operative, while the others serve in support roles. They are run in third person, with each operative using different types of weapons and skills depending on their exosuit. Enemies have different types of resistances and mechanics, which encourages the player to build different squads to tackle the varied challenges. Each exosuit has unique abilities that both define the operative's role, weapon type, and their powers. A frontline DPS operative, for instance, shines in high damage weapons, whereas a support character benefits from gear that amplifies their buffs or heals. Similarly, a shotgun-based operative will struggle against long-range foes, so pairing her with a sniper operative has synergy. Likewise, a melee bruiser paired with a healer or shield provider to stay in the fight makes a lot of sense. The banner gacha systems let you pull new exosuits with currency you earn through regular gameplay, including missions and quests. Banners are seasonal and constantly rotating, always giving the players something to look forward to the next season. As any online game that relies on constant updates, they evolve during their lifetime, meaning that the versions we play today might not be the one we play in the future. In an effort to explain the evolution and the history of Snowbreak, I will divide it into 3 eras, starting on release. The 1.0 version of the game told a post-apocalyptic story about a society that struggled to stay alive after the first descent of chaotic entities called Titans. These immense and powerful creatures not only thrive on destruction, but their presence will release minions and a deadly toxic substance called Titagen that looked like snow. Normal weapons did not work against these Titans, and humanity's survival was at stake. In order to respond to the situation, a corporation called Yggdrasil built walls around the invaded area to quarantine the spread of the contamination, effectively creating a containment zone. Despite this giving them hope for the future, there still wasn't a way to combat these enemies effectively until Yggdrasil found a woman called Life Besla, who came in contact with a Titan during the first descent, giving her the ability to harness the power of Odin to defeat them. Yggdrasil then found the Heimdall Force, a new battle division focused on finding others like Life, who could harness the power of ancient deities to turn the tide of the war. The release version of the game peaked in terms of gameplay, theory crafting, and leaderboards at the time. The game was committed of being a shooter. Some characters were great in third person, while others had more of a first person focus. The game still had to be beaten on mobile, which meant all the content was clearable on different easier difficulties for obtaining currencies, while having an optional harder rank mode in which you could push the boundaries of your squads. Team building used to be as important as gearing, which will give the player agency on the combinations available for combat. This made you invest your resources in a more strategical way, depending on the operatives available on your personal roster. The story had interesting mature elements, touching themes that explored topics like the dependency of the population under a private corporation who took control of society after the first descent. This catastrophe also contaminated the cities with snow-like substance that caused an illness called eubosis that will eventually kill a person if unattended. Only Yggdrasil produced the treatment and had access to it. This caused a big social division amongst the survivors, who did not necessarily see this company as their savior. All the problems led to gangs and calls to rise due to the conditions created by being left homeless by the Titans, with everyday people ending in slums fighting for food and medicine. These groups would sometimes go against the Heimdall Force with opposite agendas that will give a feeling of moral ambiguity, often making you think who was actually in the right or wrong. Not everything was great though. While the summary might sound good, the truth is that the delivery was flawed. The story often dragged too much on monologues that didn't bring much to the plot, with a lot of over-explanation. While some of the story elements were intriguing, the story chapters released during this era were not the best written but had the most soul. The UI was also very rough in this stage, with multiple problems with the speed on the visual novel parts of the game. You either had to click every dialogue twice for half an hour or miss text because of the impossible speed of the subtitles. Navigation through the different parts of the game has always been a problem with Snowbreak since release, distancing the title from early success. The difficulty to understand all the screen's menu had a steep learning curve that put people off. The compromise of being a game for both PC and mobile meant it was designed for the latter. It kept improving over time, but it was always seen as one of the weakest aspects of the game. It's in this update that the game shifted heavily into fan service and mobile. This move had major consequence in all of the aspects of the game. This patch had a complete change of tone. No longer will the player have a team of colleagues but a harem. The story abandoned the grittiness in favor of a more colorful and casual setting that focused more on romance. The changes happened gradually rather than instantly with each subsequent season. The vision from Amazing Season Games was clear. The game will dive into a new Chinese concept called Master Love. Per this vision, the developers started removing all male characters from the game, as Snowbreak became a world in which the player was the only male. They also announced a rewrite of the older character stories while phasing them out. Retconning started hitting multiple original characters like Life Besla, the proud and stoic operative who merely focused on training and becoming stronger to rain revenge on titans that destroyed the world. Now, she was focusing on being pretty for his husband by getting huge breast implants and getting married in a double covenant along her former rival Fanny. Snowbreak always had a romance aspect, but it wasn't the main focus of the game or the story. Intimate situations will be more about insinuation and imagination than anything explicit. The process also required you to invest playtime to raise their affection level in order to complete the character storyline. The main plot became an episodic romance with some fighting on the background. The containment zones were forgotten along with the snow and all the conflicts with the different factions, moving away from the social commentary and intrigue. Every new season turned into a new opportunity opportunity for the main character to make out or get married with a different character, sometimes with a new operative being introduced and falling in love with the player during the same update. The trend continued with 2 covenants every 6 months, with the wedding dresses being sold as cosmetics for their battlesuits. There were also covenant scenes in which the player could interact intimately. The wedding aspect became really popular, with communities speculating on who will be their next bride. The shift into mobile also introduced new exosuits that were more powerful than all the previous characters, creating a power creep that divided the gameplay into before and after. Shooting became irrelevant, destroying many game mechanics along the way. Cover from destructible objects became obsolete as they turned into obstacles rather than tactical positions. Operatives started coming in packages where every character will have their own logistics team and weapon, and even their own support character, basically removing customization. Power creep kept coming in installment after installment, leading the tier crafting community to abandon the game. No longer did you need to craft your squad, instead all you needed was some of the newer DPS exosuits, their signature weapon along with their support character, and you could trivialize all the content in the game. Concorde Ode patch introduced the 5th and 6th Covenant ceremonies. At this point, the developers had shifted the gameplay so far from the original game that new modes and revisioning of the content had been taking place, as the power creep had eliminated any sense of resistance from the enemies. Although Snowbreak was never hard to begin with, the game was still a shooter and required hand-to-eye coordination. It got to the point in which you could beat anything by just pressing the skill button over and over until the end. The developer team understood the problem. New difficulties and changes were made to the core modes of Paradoxical Labyrinths and Gigalink to take into account the increased power of the new meta. Minigames that use operatives in different creative ways starting to appear, like puzzle racing or in tower defense challenges. The chibi multiplayer mode became permanent with more engaging variations like hide and seek, PvP deathmatches, and PvE encounters. It looked like the seasonal service were giving Seasun the correct information to improve on ways their fans wanted. During this stage, the main focus of the game became eroticism. The exosuits that once were battle armors had become just tools of fashion without form or restrictions, with the new sets coming in the form of swimsuits or schoolgirl outfits. It was at this time that the amazing Seasun had been sending figurines through a partnership with the China Post, causing anger of the general public for the inappropriate usage of state-owned entities, then becoming national news as TV stations showed footage of a streamer playing the illegal version of Snowbreak. After this event, an investigation was started by the government, resulting in most of their videos being removed from their official Bilibili channel, the Chinese equivalent of YouTube and X, followed by an emergency server shutdown on March 2nd, 2026. The consequences of the one-child policy in China had led to a phenomenon referred as leftover man. The imbalance in men-to-women ratio in their populations caused over 45 million single men in 2024. These loneliness problems eventually gave birth to the master love concept, as men kept gravitating towards games that offered them emotional support. In an effort to prevent a population collapse and increase birth rates, the Chinese government has been creating new laws to uphold moral standards, effectively banning pornography in 2025, with strict penalties for violators, including fines and potential imprisonment. Departments like the Cyberspace Administration of China monitor digital environments to safeguard Chinese cultural integrity against gambling, violence, and extramarital affairs. After avoiding end of service due to low profits and going all in into the master love concept, Snowbreak first caught the attention of the government back in August 2024. Amazing Seasun had to comply to a law that forced censorship on the game's client. While they complied with the changes they were asked to do, the uncensored version kept being available by changing a single number on a configuration file, letting Chinese citizens still have access to it. Many cosmetics were removed from the shop at the time, but those who already bought the skins got to keep them, as well as getting the new versions of them, gaining the trust from the community that the studio will stand by them and their vision. On version 2.3, Eventually, a new drama will arise in the Chinese population as Snowbreak had broken a rule of master love in which there was a rejection from a character within the story, an act that is not accepted under this framework. This led to an immediate maintenance mode and an official apology from the developers. They promised to rewrite the story, effectively returning it a few days later with a new storyline that made the player base happy, reinforcing once again the trust in the game. Amazing Seasun faced a financial success, and in return they reinvest back into the game by re-adding voice actors for English localization alongside a general improvement in the quality of the releases. The developers unapologetically followed their master love vision with an estimated peak of 10,000 concurrent players on Steam and monthly incomes of up to $27 million or more across all platforms. Amazing Seasun might have flown too close to the sun, as when the authorities noticed they were circumventing their ethic laws, the game was shut down with little notice. They returned with heavier censorship than ever, provoked a flood of bad reviews on Steam, making it go up to 86%, overwhelmingly negative at the day of writing this essay. The same platform counted 3,813 players on the day of the servers reopened due to hype, with the population abruptly falling each passing day. With over 2 months of no revenue or communication, some fans remain hopeful as they trust Seasun will stand by them. On the other hand, some have lost hope as they feel like the game came back only for legal purposes before calling end of service. The truth is that only time will tell. There's a lot more I want to talk about this title, but I'll keep that in different videos. If you want to dig more into the Snowbreak iceberg, or if you just want to double check the sources, the links are all at the end of the video description. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching. Until next time, bye.